Okay, in this video we're going to construct congruent angles and bisectors of angles. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw an angle. Now remember that an angle is the intersection of two rays. So I'm just drawing a ray here, then I drew a ray up here. And remember, the rays have an end point, go on in one direction. End point, on in one direction. Now this common end point becomes the vertex of the angle. Okay, so what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to go down here and I am going to draw a ray. Okay, now notice it doesn't matter how long this ray is because this one actually goes on and on. I'm not concerned with the length of the ray. I'm going to be concerned with the size of the angle. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do in doing my construction is I am going to press my compass into the vertex of my initial angle, and I am going to mark until it crosses both rays. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to do the same thing with one ray, and I'm going to obviously extend it far enough to be that large. So I'm just going to go on up so I know I have plenty of space there. Alright, so remember, draw your angle. Just pick a measure. There's not anything in particular. You don't have to go over halfway because there is no halfway with a ray. Alright, just extend it out till it crosses in two places. Keep the same measure. Do it at the bottom. Now, the next piece that we're going to do is we're going to measure the distance between the points where the compass crossed the rays. Okay? So, I measured that by extending it out. I press the compass in one point, extend it till it crosses there. Now I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to press it into this point, and then I'm going to simply arc until it crosses the arc I already made. Now that is where I'm going to draw my ray through. So I am going to press my put my line here, draw my ray through that point where it crossed. Okay, see, it went right through that point. I'm a little off. You will be too occasionally. It's not really anything to worry about. Now those two angles look about the same. Let's just kind of double check just for the purposes of seeing how accurate I am. I'm going to line up my protractor, center, dot. Now protractors are different, so depending on what your protractor might look like, you might have to line it up down here. If the arrow goes to below, then you'd line it up here. If there's a circle, typically it goes there. Then you'd line your ray up so where it ends in 0. Now I would measure this, and I'm looking at small numbers because it's less than 90. This is about 47 degrees, and when I measure here, it's about the same thing. It's a little bit off, but they're pretty close. So those are congruent angles. Now let's label them real quickly. Alright, let's call this angle XAY. Okay, now this looks like an L, so typically you're going to see me put a little angle mark through it. Books probably don't do that, but I do it when I write, simply so that you can see that it is an angle and it's not the letter L. We always remember, call the angle with the vertex in the middle, so it's either going to be XAY or YAX. It won't be XYA because you go from X to Y to A, and that's not an angle. Alright, now I'm going to label this new angle KBQ. Okay, now the way I have drawn them then, angle XAY is congruent to angle KBQ. Now, you could have put QBK. It doesn't matter. The angles are still the same. Typically, though, I like to put angles, the points that are in the same location. But it would be equal if you did the other way as well. But those are congruent angles. So remember the steps. Draw the ray. Draw the other ray, go down here and draw a ray, make your first arc, do an arc down here, measure here and arc, and then connect. Okay, now let's do a bisector. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an angle and I'm going to bisect it. Okay, so I'm going to call this angle XAK. And I want to bisect angle XAK so that I have two congruent angles. Alright? So in order to do that, the first thing I have to do, always with an angle, you're always going to have to make an arc, because you have to define 2 points that are the same distance from the vertex in pretty much anything you do. So we make that initial arc. Now, here's the trick. Remember how when we did the midpoint of a segment, we extended over halfway? Well, this is kind of the same thing. We're basically going to find the midpoint. If we had a segment here, we're going to find the midpoint. But we don't have to draw it. We just have to measure from here to here. Okay? Now, note that I measure from there, from my 2 points, just like if I was going to do a congruent angle. But in this case, I'm staying here and I'm just going to swing my arc out. And I want to make sure it swings wide enough to be midway. Okay, I'm going to pick my compass up, press it into this side, and swing again. Whoops. The more paper, by the way, that you have under your paper, like if you use a notebook, your compass drawings will be more exact if you can actually press it into that point and then swing out. Okay, now the point where those two pieces crossed, I'm going to connect this point to my vertex. Okay, and I'm going to call this point M. Alright, now I have two congruent angles, and I need to write those angles that are congruent. Alright, it would be angle XAM is congruent to, now this is, remember the equal with the squiggly above it is congruent, and some of you all will do just the opposite. I'm left-handed, so I pretty much do everything backwards. Okay, and then angle MAK. Okay, so these two angles are congruent, and if they are, they should have the same measure. So if I measured them with my protractor, so I'd line up this and then read this one, and it looks like it's 26. Then I rotate it here, line it up, read this one, and it's a little bigger. It's 27, but it's still pretty accurate. Now, the thing that you need to remember about constructions, leave the arcs, don't erase them. Because if the arcs are there, I can look at it, I can see that you've done it correctly, and I can also see when your circle arcs are not where they're supposed to be. It's real easy as a teacher. Think about this. This piece right here would be like making a circle. So when you start doing geometric constructions, the geometric constructions, you're going to, instead of doing arcs with Geometry Sketchpad, you're going to be doing circles, because these arcs that I've been making have been parts of circles. So basically, when you're going to be doing Sketchpad, any of these arcs that we've made, you'll draw the circles, find the points where they cross, and then hide the circles. Okay, and your videos in Geometry Sketchpad will show you how to do that. Okay, in the next part of your videos. Okay.